Those of you live, welcome. I think it's great that this is going to be recorded. So for those of you who are watching this recording later on, we'd be happy to hear from you. We'll give you some contact information at the end to have a discussion about this program later. Briefly, ours is a 12-month course-based program focused on professional skills, technical skills in environmental science. We have both full-time option, which is the 12-month program, and part-time option, which you can take over a number of years. We have 3 fields of study, which we're going to discuss in our next slide in a little bit more detail. But the main parts of the program are a number of courses, followed by a research or internship option at the end of the first 8 months of the program for a 4-month period. There's lots of experiential learning in our program. We have significant professional support, including 3 full-time dedicated staff in our internship office. Our program is well known for camaraderie and program community. We have just now recently surpassed our 1,000 alumni mark. We have a lot of folks that have been in our program since its inception in 2006. We have a lot of ability to bring people together in our program, and though we're large, we are really built around a lot of service in our program and a lot of support. We also have a number of financial supports that are available for people to be able to access our program. And like all UofT programs, University of Toronto itself is a top Canadian university for employability. So in the timeline, a typical timeline for a student in our program is a September start. There's 2 semesters of coursework in September to December, and then again from January into April. In the fall term, there's a lot of cohort building. You're meeting a lot of people. You're working on professional skills development and training, trying to get the best resume, working on interview skills, networking, all of these kind of things. And then in the winter term, continuing to take your coursework, applying for a number of jobs through the boards that we have internally and externally, meeting employers, continuing to network, and then for those students that are in the research option, starting to be immersing yourself into the overall research process through courses such as our directed readings courses, which kind of bring you up to speed with what the cutting edge is so that you can kind of start off your research in the summer with a bit of a bang. And then we end up in the summer term, which can include some coursework early in the summer term, such as our field courses and our taxonomy courses, but you start your internship or your research and you continue to build and expand your network as a part of that. So I'm going to hand off to Professor Karen Smith to talk about the next couple of slides.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm going to talk about a little bit more detail about the 3 fields of study that we offer in our master's program. So the first one is called Terrestrial and Aquatic Systems, and we kind of consider this the general program. This was the first program in our master's program. So it allows for taking many elective courses across a wide variety of topics in environmental science. So here are some examples of courses that we offer: management and risk assessment, courses on contaminated sites. We also offer courses related to professional skills such as project management. So that's a little bit about the TAS stream that we call it. I'm the director of the Climate Change Impacts and Adaptation stream, and so this one I know the best, so I can tell you a little bit more about this. So this is a program that's really geared towards developing skills that will allow people to bridge the gap between the hard climate science and the stakeholder or decision maker who needs to use climate information to make decisions. So we have courses related to climate science and modeling, climate change impact assessment. We also have courses on climate change adaptation and climate policy. So it's quite a well-rounded program in terms of the climate change and climate science knowledge that you will gain, but the trade-off is that a lot of these courses are required. So you don't have as much flexibility as you might have in our general program where there are a lot of elective courses. The final stream is conservation and biodiversity. And this program is really geared towards the communication, with the policy science interface, I guess, and how to communicate science around conservation and biodiversity to the policymakers who are involved in, drafting regulations and plans and things around conservation and biodiversity. So courses that we offer in this stream, for example, include applied conservation and policy, science communication, as I kind of mentioned in my description. This is a really key component of this program. And so here are some examples down here of happy students who have been involved in these 3 streams and sort of demonstrating some of their expertise. So for example, for conservation and biodiversity, one of our employer partners is the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'll give a little overview about some of the options that we have for our master's program. So we have 2 options. One is the internship option, which our internship team will talk about in more detail afterwards, but I will give a little bit of an overview on our research option. So both of these options, internship and research, are the option that you would choose for your summer semester of our program. So those 4 months during the summer will either be dedicated to a workplace internship or a research project. So for the research project, you may have a research idea that you're interested in pursuing, or you talk to some faculty in our department and you think, yeah, I would be interested in working in their lab or in analyzing some of their data. So you would kind of make this relationship with a faculty member, relatively soon in the program, in the first couple of months or so, and start to sketch out a research project. And this would take place over the summer with usually a little bit of preparation, in the winter semester leading up to the summer. And then at the end of the summer, we usually have a research defense day where students write up their research as a report. One thing to note about this is that there is a stipend that goes along with this, a research fellowship. So while you're doing your research project throughout the summer, you are being compensated as well. So usually we have maybe about 10% of our class or so choosing the research option each year.
Hi everyone, I can jump in for the internship team. So one of the great things about the internship option is that you have a dedicated team of individuals who are here to support your growth and development. We actually work with all the students registered in our program, whether you're in the research option or internship option, through a professional skills and seminar course, where we not only invite in industry experts and researchers, but also our valued employer partners and our alumni to come in to help expand all of our students' network. And we take the time within that course to bring everybody up to speed about the labor market, as well as preparing yourself with your resume and your cover letter and your interview skills for the professional world of work. Fortunately, we've had a long-standing reputation of having all of our students secure internships. And last summer's average was between $18 to $20 per hour, which is really wonderful to see that over the 4-month period of the internship, that a student can make around $11,000 to help offset the cost of the program. You'll also see on this slide a little bit of a breakdown of the different areas that our students have landed positions. We have a very large percentage of our group securing with a level of government, but there's also a lot of students who end up working in academic industry partnerships or in the private sector or not-for-profit ENGO groups. So we'll move on to the next slide. This slide shows some examples of our Master of Environmental Science employer partners, which changes year over year. We're very pleased to have a lot of what we call perennial partners who come back to hire through our program year over year. Some highlights. Did you want me to highlight that last slide? We're good. Some highlights would be the federal government, for sure. We have a lot of partners, anywhere from Environment and Climate Change Canada through to Health Canada and Parks Canada. We've got a lot of municipal partners who will hire our students over the summer. We've worked with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority and other of the 36 conservation authorities across Ontario. And we have quite a number of industry partners, both small, medium, large, or not-for-profit, who always look forward to welcoming back our students in roles. So we'll move on to the next slide. Some of the areas that we see our students taking up internship opportunities or launching their careers are listed on this slide. Really, our students find opportunities across the board and often use this internship as a stepping stone into a company or organization and find themselves staying on. We're really pleased to share that this summer 2020, we have over 70% of our students who have received an extension from their initial internship 4-month period, which is really exciting to see, especially given that we're in a COVID-19 year. Oh, something popped on my screen with someone waiting in the waiting room. So we'll move on.
So I'll take the next slide. I'm Julie Quenneville, and I'm the Graduate Programs Administrator. I've had the privilege of working with this program since the inception back in 2005. We've seen a lot of students. We started off with 16 in our program, and now we have a steady state of approximately 100 students and 3 fields as opposed to 1 initially. So if you're interested in applying to this program, what constitutes an application? What are we looking for? An appropriate bachelor's degree, basically a Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Engineering, or a Bachelor of Arts, as long as you have the science background. So we've got the difference between the 3 fields of study, both the terrestrial and aquatic systems and the climate change impacts and adaptation fields of study. We're looking for the science background. We're looking at least 2.5 courses or 1 full course of chemistry, physics, calculus, and biology. Now, some students do apply with deficiencies, and that typically, depending on the strength of your application and the courses that you enroll in, students, this would be basically what you're seeing here is the ideal candidate, but given the interdisciplinary nature of this program, we do have students with some deficiencies in some of these areas and still manage to be quite successful in the program. So the other field of study, the conservation of biodiversity, is quite different. You need to complete an undergraduate program in biology or a closely related field. So 2 different backgrounds needed depending on the field of study. We also look at your work experience. We do have a lot of students coming back to upgrade their skills, and they tend to be part-time students. And again, it depends on how long you've been out of school. There's so many factors that go into the application. So how do you apply? We've basically got two deadlines, sorry. The early deadline is February 1. And in order to meet this deadline and apply to our Think, Shoot, Change video competition, we want you to meet this early deadline of February 1st. So you've got 2 weeks beyond February 1st to submit all your supporting documents, and we'll go through those documents in the next slide. If you are an international applicant, we need you to submit your application by the early deadline of February 1 and February 15th for your documents. So going back to the Think, Shoot, Change video competition, this is a great way to supplement your studies, your fees for this program. Essentially, first prize is approximately $8,000, $6,000 for second, and $4,000 for third prize. Essentially, it's your opportunity to create a unique 2-minute video, and it usually surrounds a certain aspect of science communication. In order to submit a video for this competition, you have to apply by the early deadline of February 1st and February 15th. Your Think, Shoot, Change video competition submission would be due by March 1st, and all the information is on our website as well. So we also have a final deadline for those students who don't make the early deadline. If you're a domestic student, you can also apply by April 30th and submit your fees by your supporting documents by May 15th. And regardless of when you apply, early or final, the fee is $120 for the online application. Gisela, you want to move it to the next slide? The next slide.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do you connect with us? We basically tried to make this video or this presentation as short and sweet. So we've got the UofT.me link here, and it's featured on this slide. Gisela is our admissions guru, gisela.bento@utoronto.ca, and certainly our internship coordinators, Joanna, who just spoke, hire masters at utsc.utoronto.ca. One of our 3 internship team members will respond to your email. If you have anything academic related, you would reach out to one of the 3 directors, Carl Mitchell for the terrestrial and aquatic systems, Professor Stuart Livingston for conservation of biodiversity, and we also have Nick Mandrick on that in the conservation of biodiversity as well, and then Professor Karen Smith, who did talk this afternoon, who's the director of the Climate Change Impacts and Adaptation field of study. And then you can follow us via social media, Instagram, Facebook. We also have info sessions. We'll be doing things a little bit differently this year now that we're working remotely, so stay tuned for our website. If you are interested in receiving any updates, you feel free to reach out to us again and subscribe to our mailing list. And I believe we're now going to open up the floor to questions.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Julie, and thank you to the team for leading us through that presentation. A lot of really rich information there, and I love the connections with industry and the information that you've presented with regard to the partners that you work with and the opportunities for students. So that's great. So just a number of questions, if I can put it to you, and please, anyone, feel free to step up to answer as you see fit. But in terms of the applications that students have to make to get onto the program, what is it that you're looking for? What are the key things that you're looking for to make an application competitive?
Carl, do you want me to take this one? Okay, I'll take this one on. So we're looking for an overall strong application. We want you to have at least 2, essentially, if you're still in school, 2 academic references. And they basically have to speak to the ability to you to successfully complete this course-based professional master's program. You have to give us some sense of why you're interested in this program, how you're going to fit with this program, which of the 3 fields you're selecting and why, and the research versus the internship enrollment option. You do have to specify that information in your application. So, you know, if there are gaps in your academic history, maybe give us some insight as to why there are gaps. You know, we're here to help support you through the application. If you ever have any questions about the strength of your application, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll support you on your journey.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up with regard to that, if I have a really, really strong personal interest or a passion in this particular field and in environmental science, but a lot of my academic background hasn't been very strongly, say, research focused, is that something that I can bring to my application?
Yes, I mean, you need a minimum B average in your last 2 undergrad years. I'm not sure I touched upon that earlier. So we are looking for, obviously, academic merit. We want to, once you're in graduate school, you need at least, you can't get a grade less than a B minus. So, and it's all letter grades. Anything less than a B minus, which is 70 to 72%, is a failing grade at the graduate level. So, you know, you need to have the academic facility to complete the program. So, you know, if passion is important. I mean, we've had students that don't necessarily successfully, they apply and they don't necessarily get in on their first application, and they may come back, strengthen their application, take some upgraded courses, and then get in their second or their third attempt. So there are ways to get into this program, again, talk to us and let us know how we can help support you and where we might identify some deficiencies and how we can help you strengthen your application.
Okay.
And if I may add,
Oh,
this is also where the application is viewed as a whole, as a package. So this is where also Julie mentioned the supporting documents that are needed for the application. So there's a letter of intent where students will show and present themselves. It works as a cover letter for their application. Students also need to submit their resume to showcase their experience, and also reference letters. We ask for a minimum of 3 reference letters as part of the application package, mostly academic. So this is where the profs can speak on behalf of the student about the applicant. We suggest that students choose wisely which references they are including, because they are very well considered, let's say that. I talk about the resume, I talk about the letter of intent, and talk about the references, and then, my apologies, experience. So if you don't have research experience, you may have professional experience, and that is also highly regarded by the admissions committee.
Okay, that's great, Gisela, because often we hear students say, look, I haven't formal experience in terms of paid experience, but I volunteered with this particular organization, or I've always been involved in this field. So I think that was the question that I was asking earlier on with regard to, will those things be considered as well?
The program is here also to get that foot on the door to our students. We are here to give the students that experience and those opportunities. So we understand that students do not finish their undergrad with a lot of experience under their belt, and that's why this program exists.
Okay. And with regard to the academic background, are there certain subjects that you have found that kind of lend more weight in terms of if students have studied or have particular academic backgrounds that sets them up for success on this program? Or do you have applicants from many, many different disciplines?
We have applicants from very many disciplines. I think, they fundamentally all have, a good science background, but from very many different places. And I think in a kind of interdisciplinary program like environmental science, it's really kind of important to have, a large cohort of students from, a diverse number of backgrounds, diverse number of ideas, and all these things come together to kind of have an even better way of thinking about some of these things. So that's absolutely welcoming. As long as there is a kind of fundamental, usually early in the undergraduate degree, having this math and chemistry and etc. Students have come from biochemistry to chemical engineering to biology to, fundamental environmental science undergrads. Lots of different things that are coming into our program.
Okay, that's very useful. That's very helpful to hear that. Are you able to share with us with regard to like what the competition is like how many people might apply versus how many places you have each year?
Sure. We take on approximately 100 students every year, so it's a large turnaround every year. We have in the high hundreds to low 200s of applications every year. Fundamentally, it's as long as your grade point average is above the minimum grade point average that's required for our program, it's the primary door that we cannot kind of get around from an SGS policy standpoint. But beyond that, students really want to make sure they're getting the right resume. They're talking to their referees, getting good reference letters. They're thinking genuinely about their personal statement. All of these things, we put all of these things together in addition to meeting that minimum GPA requirement. That is going to get you into our program for sure.
Right. Okay. And with regard to that, someone want to add?
The statement I think is really important, and sometimes students just sort of do that at the last minute, don't really think about it. So just, you know, for example, students who apply to the climate change impacts and adaptation stream occasionally don't mention climate change at all in their statement.
Wow.
Right? So these are the kinds of things that, you know, we look for, we notice, we're paying attention to whether you are genuinely interested in, and what is your motivation to coming into our program. So like, so don't leave that statement till the last minute. Think about it. Take some time to draft it. We read them. We definitely read them.
Right, and that was going to be one of my questions, in fact. And I know within the Career Centre, both, you know, I'm coming from St. George, but the students who are coming from Scarborough and Mississauga, you have access to people who will help you put that narrative together, because it's about telling that story to show your breadth and your depth of experiences, and telling it in a way that will be engaging, but also will make sense. Why am I going into this program? What have I got to offer this program? So yes, I'm glad you said that, Karen. It's with regard to start early, start often, get many eyes on it, get it drafted, and use the resources. The writing centres are there to help you. The career centres are there to help you as well. And so one of my questions I was going to ask you, in fact, is commonly, you know, what are the kinds of mistakes that you tend to see students make with their applications? And you've shared one with regard to not sharing your passion about the area that you're going to go into. Would there be others, like common mistakes or kind of things that people trip over with the application process?
Yeah, so I can take that one. So like one, for example, that I think Gisela and Julie kind of already sort of alluded to, is make sure that you pick appropriate references, or references that know you, that you have a relationship with. I mean, often we don't get, you know, bad reference letters, but usually we get reference letters that, not usually, but sometimes we get reference letters that say, you know, I don't really know this student very well. They were in my class, and you know, I can tell you what they got in my class, but I don't really know them. And so that just doesn't provide us with any insight. And it also demonstrates to us that, you know, you didn't take some care in choosing your references. So that is definitely, you know, a pitfall. Don't try to start to establish relationships now with professors. And, you know, if you can even be, you know, thoughtful about it in terms of which courses do you think, you know, like would a reference letter from an environmental science course be more useful than a reference letter from my French course, for example, which, you know, sometimes we get reference letters from, you know, someone who taught someone French, which is great, but, you know, we would like to hear from a faculty member that, you know, is a little bit more in our field, preferably. So that's one thing I would say.
Absolutely. And, you know, help your referees to help you, essentially. It's not up to them to get to know you, it's up to you to make sure that they know enough about you to be able to speak to you. So particularly as we've gone virtual with regard to our classes, there's a real need now for students to reach out early to make sure that, you know, that you are establishing those early relationships with the professors, and you're not going to them in the last 2 weeks before the deadline to say, by the way, this is who I am, I'm applying for this program, would you mind writing me a reference? So, you know, be respectful of their time, the fact that other people might be approaching them, but also give them time to get to know you and help them, you know, by sharing what are your interests, what are your passions, so that they can write that into the reference for you. So that's other great advice. Anybody else like to chip in on that with regard to tips or suggestions to really optimize your application?
I'll add one thing, and I think it's already been said, but just to triple down, is in relation to the personal statement, because we really give it a lot of weight, and there's multiple aspects to this that students don't always maybe think about, but we don't want it to be a mystery. We can kind of, you know, be really straightforward about what it is. One is, you know, proofread it. Does it make sense? Is there a lot of spelling mistakes? I mean, part of the personal statement is actually our one initial test for us to understand a student's ability to communicate, especially in a written form. So, you know, simple things like that are important. You know, try to focus a statement like that on what it is, with as many examples as you can fit in a page, really, about why you're doing what you're doing. And avoid, maybe a good tip is to avoid the things that would maybe come down to a term like fancification of some sort, like, you know, quotes from other authors and ways of, you know, the fact that you've loved environmental science ever since you were able to talk, you know, things like that that aren't necessarily as genuine. You know, unless they are backed up by concrete examples, they don't really ring as true. And the space is really much better used to try and come across for what it is that you're actually interested in. And maybe you can use the space in your application if you have some exceptional thing or something's happened early. Let's say you had a rough first year of university, but it's because something happened in your family life, or there was a financial consideration, or whatever it happened to be. We don't need mega details, but if you make a point that there were some issues early on, a health issue or something early on in your university career, and things got much better going through once you were able to get through, and make that point clear, those kind of, you can use the spaces in an application that aren't necessarily for that, but you can use them for that to make sure that those kind of, you know, unique pieces of your application come across to the people that are eventually going to look at it.
Yes, because you have to bear in mind that, you know, people who sit on admissions committees have seen many, 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 many of these. So try to not be generic, as you say, try to be authentic. And it's about telling your story. So it's about storytelling. And if you think about anyone telling you a story, you really get engaged if you're telling something that they haven't heard before and that it really has a focus to it. So that's great advice. Can I ask with regard to, so again, a question that we get a lot is the GPA weighted? Do you take the final 2 years of undergrad? Is it across all the years? If you could speak to that.
We take the final 2 years, Mary, and sometimes we'll defer to the last year. So the SGS policy is the last year, but we've made it more stringent by going the last 2 years. So we weight the average for the last 2 years. And of course, often students are applying when they're still in program. So we take whatever grades are available in their third year and whatever's available in fourth year. So any offer that we would provide to the student would be conditional upon the student maintaining at least a B average in their last 2 years once they complete it. So very rarely do we have to rescind an offer, but you know, it can happen.
Okay.
And maybe here is a good time to just mention about crediting and no crediting in your, in your final year. You know, we strongly discourage, you know, doing a kind of credit, no credit in the final year. And, you know, if you're thinking of applying to graduate school, really, you know, try to avoid doing that. Okay.
Okay, thank you for that.
Add on to this, Mary, if it's okay, because I find students, you know, they really become worried about the intricacies of their grade point averages and things. A few things to consider. You know, a lot of students these days are not necessarily completing a 4-year degree in 4 years for many, many different reasons. And so, you know, students may be taking just 2 or 3 courses at a time. And so when we say third and fourth year grades, what we really mean are the last kind, if you are taking a full-time load, what is that in the last 2 years? So that may, depending on the student, it may span over 3 years to obtain the number of credits that are kind of equivalent to a full year. And if you want to get really specific, you know, we don't split semesters. We'd go back and we wouldn't, you know, if we have to take more credits, we're going to take it from a next term. But if we only need one of those credits, we're actually going to use the whole semester for those calculations. You know, if you take a lot of first year and second year courses in your final year of undergraduate study, I mean, it's not a deal breaker necessarily, but we may try to get a bit of an idea, you know, especially if you're on the cusp of kind of admissibility, where the upper year courses kind of fit in those ways. So there's a few, you know, the credit, no credit thing is a really good thing to have brought up. There's a few like intricacies that are really important for students to understand. And I know that they get hung up on, but hopefully that helps out.
Right. No, that is great. And I think there's great encouragement there to say it's not black and white. And if you have question marks yourself, reach out, ask those questions, put your own particular individual situation to the department, and it will be looked at and make your case. And then, you know, take it from there. But don't just kind of self-determine, I suppose, is what I'm hearing from you as well. Okay, which would be great. Okay, so I suppose one of the final questions that I'm hearing from students also is, you know, with regard to COVID, what has changed, or has anything changed with regard to your application process? If there's, you know, are there interviews or discussions? And with regard to the program and the course itself, insofar as you know at this point in time?
I can perhaps answer in terms of the application process.
Mm-hmm.
So for the application process, nothing has changed much. The process will continues as normal. We normally have a big info session where we have an in-person big meeting with all the staff and important faculty present and students. So this year we'll have to go remotely, and if you sign into our mailing list, you will receive information on remote events, on online events that will replace this info session. We will be advertising them through our mailing list, mm-hmm. and on online as well. We have an open door policy where we welcome everyone to our offices for a chat about the program. That will not be available, but we are available via email and via Zoom, Teams, whatever, Skype, to talk one-on-one. And we are always delighted to meet our applicants and help them through this journey. So do not hesitate. If you prefer an email, we'll do it via email. If you prefer a one-on-one, we're happy to do that. You have our contacts and our mailing list. We look forward to hearing from prospective applicants.
That's great. So I'm going to wrap up with one final question for the group. And again, please, anyone jump in with this. But what is one unique thing about your program?
One unique thing. We have many unique things, but the one thing that I like to point out a lot is, you know, though we're a large program, and some people think that they can be, you know, caught up in a large program, especially the master's level. You can see even here we have an extraordinarily dedicated number of staff, and there is a lot of care and a lot of community that goes in this program, but it's also built on having over 1,000 alumni from our program having graduated from our program now. And so there's we have a community within a community within a community. And that's really helpful to our students on many cases, both, you know, with their research and internship that they may choose in our program, to what it is in their first, second, and 15th step of their career after they're done with our program.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, so thank you for the time that you've taken to present to us today, and also for the questions that you've answered here. You have shared with us the resources, and the contact information has stayed on the screen there. So I would encourage students who are interested to reach out, make those connections, and get all of your questions answered. So that's it for today. Thank you all for attending. Bye for now.
Thank you, and bye-bye.